Moving on to our next speaker, we have Tamara Robertson. You may know Tamara from her work on TV shows like Mythbusters, but she is also an accomplished chemical and biomolecular engineer and superhero scientist. As co-founder of the STEAM comic Seekers of Science, she travels the nation sharing her love of technology, making, and superheroes in hopes of inspiring the next generation of STEAM leaders. Thank you so much for joining us, Tamara. We're happy to have you here and we're ready for you whenever you are.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to actually jump right into screen sharing, if that's okay, and then I'll come back out for questions. As she just said, I'm Tamara Robertson, and for those of you that don't know me, here's a little bit of a teaser of what I do.
From day one, biomolecular engineer Tamara has shown construction expertise and science savvy.
Science.
A born tinkerer, she played a key role in some of the most successful builds in the series. And her elite project management grit and determination saw her take out 2 MVPs. First for Needle in a Haystack, and then the myth of the vacuum cleaner climber.
Thanks, Kyle.
You're welcome. Good work today.
When I started this journey, I was just really hoping to make the girls in science proud, and I'm definitely going to carry this as a badge of honor this week because I think I'm doing it.
So I'm that Tamara Robertson. You guys may know me from TV shows like Mythbusters, Mythbusters of Church, Mythbusters Junior, and Jinx, which was a really fun science prank show. But way before I became a science host on television, I became a chemical and biomolecular engineer. And so that's what I'm going to focus on talking to you all about today. So if I can leave you with just one sentiment that you remember, it's that where your journey starts doesn't define where it ends. You do. Because if you had told me back in the 80s when I was this little girl pedaling around in my Flintstone Volkswagen that I was going to one day be attached to Hollywood, that I was going to become an engineer, or that I was going to live the life that I live today, I would have told you that there was no possible way. Because I was born into a family where both my parents were military, they both were on the enlisted side, and the path that was laid out for me as a child was that I would either go into the military or I would get married. No one in my family had ever gone to college, so they had no idea how to show me that pathway. And I didn't have anyone in front of me that had gone to college to tell me that there was another direction. In fact, a lot of people ask me when I knew I wanted to be an engineer. And the truth is that as a kid, I was following my dad around in the shop before I was knee-high to a duck, and I was pulling out tools and taking things apart, which my mom did not enjoy as much as I did. And I had no idea that engineering was a career field. In fact, the only engineer that I knew of was Scotty on Star Trek, who I was a big fan of, but I didn't realize that that was something in real life that you could pursue. I was actually a sophomore in college before I had a professor sit me down and tell me that I was very strong in math and science and ask me why I hadn't decided to pursue engineering. And I actually remember looking at her and saying, well, girls don't do that. Because again, I didn't have any engineers in my life, and I surely didn't have any female engineers in my life. But she actually transferred me over to the program, had me go to NC State, which I'm a Wolfpack grad, so go Pack. And I sat in a classroom, and for the first time ever, I felt challenged, I felt engaged, and I felt excited about what my future was going to be as a worker. So it's one of those things that when we're born, we're often handed the limitations or the barriers that our parents felt or our families felt or our community felt. But in reality, if we take the time to explore the world around us, not just as a going outside and seeing what nature is, which you should totally do and you should be curious, but also exploring the different career fields that there are, getting to know people that maybe we don't see as often. And the internet is such an amazing place for that. You know, you can research so many different job fields now, especially in STEM. So I just want all of you to know that you can control that narrative. You can take the pen back and say, this is where I want to go with my future. And as long as you're willing to work hard, you can definitely achieve that. Which brings me to my next point. Don't fake it till you make it. Learn it till you earn it. Invest in your education. I can tell you right now, like, I didn't know about scholarships or grants or about any of the help that you could get monetarily, because again, I had parents that had never been to college. I had family that had no idea that these were options. And so I just started working, and I worked 3 jobs through college. I lived my first 2 years in college in my car because I had the option to pay for rent or to pay for books and tuition. I don't recommend that. I recommend researching scholarships and grants. There are so many for the STEM fields. But I do recommend looking at your education as an investment, because every day that I went to school, it was never a question of if I wanted to be there or why I was there. I knew that my education was going to enable me to take control of what I wanted to be in life and where I wanted my life to go. And so if you look at your education as an investment and realize that, yes, I know people say, oh, college are the fun years, it's the party years. Like, don't party, don't do that. Like, celebrate the little wins, celebrate when you get through the really hard exams or the really hard licensure tests, for sure. But realize that if you dedicate that time and you look at that the money that you're putting in as an investment, later on when you're in your STEM field, you're going to be making enough money to be able to celebrate and have fun with your friends. In fact, as a chemical and biomolecular engineer, we are the highest paid bachelor's degree that you can get. There are people that graduated with me that, coming directly out of college, were making 6 figures because they went into the oil and gas field. I went into vaccines. Biotech doesn't pay as well, but I knew every day that I was helping people, so I was okay with it. So there is a lot of options, and you can really start to strengthen where you're going to be if you invest in your education. I would also say own your quirky, because that's your uniqueness and that's what makes you you. And you're the only you that there is, and the world needs each of you and what you bring. So you guys have got so much pressure, especially from social media and the internet, about who you should be and what you should be, but don't listen to that, because it's your uniqueness that is what is going to, like, make a difference in the world and what's going to enable companies to start changing what they do as well. So I'm a very quirky, weird person, and I own it and I love it, and it is what it is. But for a long time I did hide it. And I feel like now that I've kind of let my like weirdness fly, it's enabled me to help a lot more people. You can connect to a lot more people when you're being genuine than you can when you just kind of follow along with everyone else. And so college is a really cool time to get to know who you are and, like, try different things and try different hobbies and meet different people, because for the first time you're kind of outside of your family and outside of your community, and you're meeting all of these people from different walks of life. And so if you just, again, take that scientific approach of remaining curious, there's so much that you can learn from the people around you and these new environments that you find yourself in. Now, Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus is one of my favorite teachers ever. And she used to say, take chances, make mistakes, get messy. And I own this to a full degree. Like, I am the first to jump in and get my hands dirty and try new things. And I will tell you, it has served me very well, both in my engineering career and in my science hosting TV career. It's one of those things that you want to make sure to always stay humble, especially as you climb the ranks as an engineer. Like, be ready to pick up the broom and help the people on the floor, because at the end of the day, people in the boardroom may feel like they run the company, but it's the people that are on the floor that are running the manufacturing, that are taking care of the day in and day out stuff, that really make or break a company. And as an engineer, if you, like, remain curious and you talk to those people and you learn from those people, because most of them have been there for 30 years or more, you're going to learn so much more about your process than you ever learned in a classroom. But you have to be willing to get your hands dirty. You have to be willing to, like, jump full-fledged in and just be there. So, listen to Miss Frizzle. She's pretty smart. And so I've been saying, stay curious, right, throughout this whole thing. And so in life, just like in science, curiosity, adaptability, and resilience and the active iteration are key to not only having a great career, but also survival. Like, look at where we're at right now with COVID. If we weren't able to pivot and start being adaptable, a lot of us would be out of jobs. We wouldn't be able to be at this amazing conference today. There's a lot to be said about learning how to, instead of looking at things as failures or looking at them as barriers, starting to be curious about what they are, what you could learn from them, how you could change because of what you've learned, how you could use what you're learning to help you continue getting back up and continuing to fight. So I have been on 4 first season shows. And so a lot of people would say, oh, every show that you're on, doesn't get renewed and it fails. Like, why don't you just give up? And the truth is that in every show, the way I look at it is I'm learning something new. I'm meeting new people. And for me, I'm expanding my platform because in 2015, I left chemical and biomolecular engineering as a full-time engineer because I was sitting as a global executive reporting into a CEO. And when I turned around to try to lift up other women in my industry, I realized that there weren't anymore for 3 levels of management. And so I decided to be adaptable and to be curious about where else I could go to get young people excited about STEM. And so in 2015, I came out and I started full-time outreach. And it was during that time that Mythbusters found me. And it was just this amazing thing that as an engineer, I get to blow things up, which you don't normally get to do. And it enabled me to strengthen my platform. Because for me, television has never been about becoming a bigger name or trying to be famous. For me, television is a tool to be able to expand a platform that teaches kids that anyone can do science and engineering. And so as long as I continue to look at things as a, how do I help people with this platform, I'm always going to feel successful and I'm always going to be happy and genuinely rewarded in my career. And so if you start to look at the world in that way, it's not what can progress me, but how can I help others? You can really start to build that resilience, because resilience really comes from trying to overcome that burnout. And burnout is often felt when you're really doing things that aren't really adding to your soul, that aren't enriching you. People say all the time, if you can do what you actually love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's because you know that you're passionate about it. Like, I will spend 80+ hour work weeks just researching tech and superheroes and figuring out how to get kids excited about science through using superpowers. And I won't even sleep, but I'll be happy about it. It will never bother me. But if I was doing something else, I want to be able to be as resilient because I want to be as passionate and I want to be as happy about it. So just always remember that if you connect what you're doing to how it helps others, it helps you to be able to get through those harder phases. Now, there are going to be hard phases though. I graduated in 2019, wow, I wish. No, 2009, which we were in a recession and no one was hiring. So it was really difficult to get jobs. And then, throughout my career, all the companies that I was at would have massive layoffs. And it becomes one of those things that job security isn't what it used to be. When our grandparents and our parents or your guys' great grandparents went through, people would stay at the same company for 30+ years. And people now are much more adaptable. They change careers all the time. And so companies as well can change over their staff often. So what my grandpa always says is that they can take your job, they can take your money, but they can never take your skills. And this is something that's echoed throughout my career for me, because as long as I go into everything wanting to learn as much as I can and from everyone that I can, I'm gaining things that no one can take away from me. So I would tell you again, get your hands dirty, stay curious, learn it till you earn it. Try to get as many of those skills as you can, because it's only going to enrich you as a person and enable you to be able to grow further in your career. Along with that, mentorship is really important. I don't feel that I would be where I am today if I didn't always have a mentor of some form. Now, mentors come in different ways. You can have stepwise mentors, you can have peer mentors, or you can have mentees. And so the way I look at it is every moment on the job is a chance to mentor someone who wants to one day walk in your shoes. So you might as well bring them along. It's as easy as if you're going to go to a meeting, or let's say you guys have an underclassman that wants to be part of a STEM club one day, but doesn't really know how to do it. Like if you're in a STEM club, bring them along, like teach them, talk to them about how they do it. And that's what we call peer mentorship. If you say want to start a STEM club because you don't have one at your school and you have a science teacher, reach out to them and talk to them about how to do it. That would be a stepwise mentorship. That's someone that's older than you, more experienced than you, that's sharing what they've learned so that you can also start something new. And then you can also have a mentee where you're actually taking someone along that maybe is in elementary school and is really excited about robotics, but doesn't really even know what that means. They just like robots. You could start mentoring them and teaching them about STEM principles. And then that way you actually get to be a mentor too. So it's really neat because you can either have, again, a peer mentor who's someone that's on the same level as you, where you guys are both kind of learning together, or a stepwise that you're learning from, or a mentee that you're teaching. But mentorship is really valuable, and know that your mentors are going to change. As you grow as a person, you should be looking for new mentors because you will outgrow your mentors. It's kind of like your kindergarten teacher was really amazing, right? But you don't need someone to teach you how to count or popcorn words when you're now learning calculus. So if you didn't move on to a new mentor that knows calculus, you wouldn't keep growing as a person. So always keep that in mind and reevaluate who your stepwise is. And what's really neat is those stepwise mentors can actually become your friends, your colleagues, and stay a part of your life, even though they're no longer being a mentor. Now, the most important thing to me, again, is outreach. So in 2015, I left a lucrative engineering career to go out and just teach the world for free. And the thing is that learning and achieving for yourself, it's not enough. It's gifting that knowledge and those skills back to the world that truly makes the difference. And you can start this at any age. When I was in middle school, I started to volunteer at Pop Warner cheerleading camps because I cheered. I used to also volunteer in science camps because I love science. And so it's something that you have something already to give back. And as you advance your career, you're going to have more and more. I've worked all over the globe with Engineers Without Borders doing relief work, including most recently being in Puerto Rico after the hurricanes. It's something that is always going to enrich you more than it's enriching those around you. So it's really one of those cool things where you're paying it forward and you're gaining so much to in return because you're learning from these people and you're helping people around you. And there is nothing cooler than seeing a small child's face the first time they see a science demo. Like you do elephant toothpaste and it's like the world just exploded for a 5-year-old. So if you have the love of science and engineering and mathematics and technology and you want to start doing some demos, like go on Pinterest, go on YouTube, go online. Like there's so many different DIYs that you can do with homemade stuff. And you can go out there and maybe instead of having a lemonade stand, you have a STEM stand and you start making the kids inspired. Now, obviously right now with COVID, you need to have masks on and maybe wait a little bit, but you could also do videos. You could make little videos and you could share them, online, and then people could also get excited that way. So for my final thing, I am a Wolfpack girl. I went to NC State. We say for the strength of the pack is the wolf and the strength of the wolf is the pack. So these are my social media handles. I check my DMs. I try to get back to everyone about once a month. Please feel free to reach out to me. When you do, let me know that you were in this program and I'll be sure to write you back. If you have a parent, that has social media, they can also write me on your behalf. Make sure that you do have parent permission before you go on social media, obviously, and always be safe. But I'm here for you guys anytime that you guys want to talk. This Lockheed and everyone has done a really great job here of setting up kind of a mentorship program. So these were some of the lessons I've learned, but there's been so much more learning that I've done. And the joy of learning things the hard way is that when you're a mentor, you get to teach your mentees how to overcome those obstacles without having to face them. So reach out and I'm happy to share and help in any way that I can. And so now I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Tamara. What an incredible presentation. And we're so honored to have you here with us. It's such a great joy having you here. We have about 10 minutes left. And so I urge anyone, if they have questions, start typing them into the chat. I think I'll just kick things off here. I definitely relate a lot to what you had mentioned at the beginning about, when you start off your career, you really take from what your parents kind of put on you about your expectations. And I think that for a lot of women, it's hard to find those mentors and those different people to help lift them up. So I guess my first question for you is for the women in STEM out there, or those that are hoping in the future that don't necessarily have those people to lift them up. What do you recommend, that resources they learn about, or what they can do to get into that field?
Yeah, so it's really an interesting thing. Mentorships and finding mentors kind of looks different through each part of your kind of education and your path. So like when you're younger, a lot of your mentors are going to end up being like coaches in your life, friends of your family. They're going to be teachers that you have. But in addition to that, now, like for instance, I mentor a group of 45 young girls from across the globe via Twitter. And so it's really interesting. A lot of young people are setting up these different groups for STEM so that they don't feel alone. Like I know I was like one of the only big nerds in my hometown, so I felt very alone. So I love what the internet is doing now to bring people together. But if you're in one of those groups, like just start reaching out. Like obviously not everyone can mentor everyone, but like sometimes like what has happened for me is some young girls have come to me to ask to be a mentorship, and I'll actually introduce them to the group, and then they get linked in, and then it becomes kind of a forum where we're all sharing, and it's great because the girls are sharing, we're answering as mentors. And then there's also more like organized organizations, like so the Society of Women Engineers, for instance, they have a really great SWE Next program, and it actually works with middle school and high school girls to pair them with women in the industry. So if you're interested in STEM, it automatically is a program where you can go into it for free, and you can be united with someone that is going to be a stepwise mentor. And then if you participate in their programs, you can also start meeting peer mentors that way. Science Olympiad has amazing programs for boys and girls. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts have started STEM programs, both of them. So like they also are really good about now bringing in speakers and having connections that way. But I also say like, never be afraid to ask. My dad used to say the worst they can say is no. So just ask people. Like there are so many people that, people think, oh, I can't ask them, I can't talk to them. Like celebrities actually answer their own DMs. Scientists answer their own DMs, for the most part, unless they're like A-list, but even some of them will answer their own DMs. So like, if you write, the worst that they can say is no, or they could not answer, but at least you're putting yourself out there to try. And I always say to use kind of that confetti effect, like send it out to like 20 people, someone's gonna say yes. And if they all say yes, then you're gonna have so many different insights. It's gonna be amazing.
Great. We also have another question here about setting up a group like this in their own community. A lot of other students, might want to set something up for themselves. So do you recommend any certain like types of teachers that students collaborate with to try to put together STEM teams?
Yeah, if your school doesn't have a STEM team, I would recommend reaching out to your science or math teachers, all disciplines of science, all levels of math. And you're going to kind of get the feel. You'll know which teacher, right? Like we all know which teacher is the cool teacher that like puts on the fun demos and does the crazy stuff. Most often, like any of us that are in STEM careers, deep down, we went into them because we don't have to grow up. We get to stay big kids and try all this fun, crazy stuff. And so they're going to be just as excited as you are to be able to integrate into that. And what's really neat too is that a lot of people are afraid to start STEM organizations because they're like, oh, STEM costs money. And I get it. Like you see it, it's all over the toy shelves, these expensive STEM. Science and curiosity is free. Like you literally like can just walk outside and have your own biology class, like looking in the dirt and seeing the weird things that live there, So I would say like if you're thinking that money is a barrier to entry, don't, because you can go to the dollar store and get stuff. You can literally, saw this guy online that uses Amazon boxes and creates incredibly big mechanical objects, like using rubber bands and Amazon boxes. Like, so there's so much that you can upcycle around you to build really cool stuff. So just keep that in mind too, because teachers don't have big budgets, so they might say, oh, we don't have enough money as a school, and just bring them ideas and mention to them there's so many grants you know, all of the different, you know, companies like NOAA and SF, like they all have grants for STEM clubs. So you can just start doing some Google searches too, and maybe bring, when you go to the teacher, prove to the teacher that you really are serious. Show them, I found some places we can get funding. I have some idea of DIY stuff that we can do, and get them excited too. Because if the teacher sees that you're willing to work just as hard as they are, there's really no reason that they should say no. Again, especially if you picked that one teacher that you know is really, really excited about what they do.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for your answer there. We also have another question here. You know, we have some middle school, high school students that are still kind of figuring out what they want to do in college. Do you mind explaining a little bit what chemical engineering is and how you got into that?
Yeah, so I'm chemical and biomolecular engineering. And I'm going to tell you right now, the reason I went into this field was because you don't actually have to choose what you want to be when you grow up. It's kind of like if you go into computer engineering or mechanical engineering, like those 3 degrees are opening up everything to you. So for chemical and biomolecular, I have done a lot of different things. So when I was in college, I ran our college's biodiesel plant, making fuel for all of our bus line. And so like I worked with like waste vegetable oil and setting up programs with local cafeterias to get that, and then actually manufactured and produced the biodiesel. And so like that's one of the things you could do. My first internship was in a system called plastics additives. So if you think about like your Tupperware, why your Tupperware is clear, there's an additive in the plastic that makes it clear. And so I worked with a company that made things to put into the resin, which is just the plastic pellets. Like if you've ever made a bouncy ball or anything like that, you know, like the little resin pellets. We would put things into that, and then it would get sold into these big companies. So with that, I got to work in like the medical field, making different like syringes. I got to work in housewares, making just food storage. I got to work in health and beauty, looking at how to make it so your makeup doesn't dry out as fast. And then from there, my first job was I worked in vaccines. I actually worked in vaccines during the swine flu pandemic. So that was a very busy job, but it was really neat because I got to learn how we make different medications. And so biotech is a field that you can go into. After that, I ended up back at the plastic additives company. And so I worked even more in like material handling. So it's kind of cool because again, I worked with like Nestle and P&G and Taco Bell and all these companies designing packaging, which was really cool. And then after that, I launched a global division for a company. And so I moved away from that technical side of engineering, and I got to kind of be in the people side where I people manage, and I managed this whole department and looked at how we could launch a different brand globally. So what I love about chemical engineering is like I said, I was in green energy, I was in plastics, I went to traditional chemical for my material launch, I was in biotech, I was in food and beverage. Like you can really go into any area. I could literally, like right now, I've been applying to rocket companies because I can easily work in rocket companies too. So if you want a degree that you don't have to really choose, and again, is the highest paying bachelor's that exists, chemical and biomolecular engineering is the way to go.
Great. Thank you so much for that description. That'll definitely be helpful for some of our younger students that are still trying to figure out and learn about all these different pathways. We have a lot of people who are really interested in contacting you. I don't know if you have either a Twitter to share, an email address, any type of information, whether you want to type it into the chat or just say it aloud. We'd be happy to share it with the students if you're comfortable sharing that.
Yeah, it was on my last slide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give my email so as we said earlier, I have a STEM outreach comic, and it's called Seekers of Science. So it's SOS. So I'll give the email for that. Oh, this is going privately. How do I do it? And then I'll give you my Twitter and my Facebook and Instagram as well. And I do check the DMs. If you all write me at the sos.comicbook and you tell me that you were here today, I will also include the first 2 issues digitally for free. So it was kind of hard to figure out how to give that. I usually give that out anywhere I speak, and I didn't really know how to do that here. So If you guys email me, I will send you that link.
Thank you so much, Tamara. That was the most common question we had, is everyone wants to contact you. And so we really appreciate you sending that out. And thank you so much for your time today. It is such an honor to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I hope all of you guys have fun today and enjoy your STEM. It's just amazing.